My name is Bill. Welcome to the Night Terrors Weekend Show. If you truly appreciate real-life maritime journeys into the void, do not even think of missing tonight's episode, Paranormal Vietnam. To people from the West, Vietnam is a country full of creepy mysteries, which are frightening enough to keep you up at night. These are true stories of the supernatural, and we're starting right now. Welcome to Elder Grown. Elder just has to fill his drink. JC is here, my brother. Welcome. Trader Monkey says hello to Bill and everyone. Let's get that. Pedro Rojas Cervantes has arrived, as well as Devoured Eagle. Rhinoceros Rex says hey. Prime 114 says hello from work. Rodney Brand is here, as well as JRD and Takahama Olsen, too. Nose Pickin' says hello to all. Nose Pickin', I like that name. T. Ceratop says hello to Bill and all. Johnny Pepperson has arrived. Let's get started, shall we? But not with this one. We're starting with this one. Here at Dickinson58601.com. is a story entitled, Did the Early Night Vision Optics in the Vietnam War Allow Soldiers to See Demons? And the author begins. A couple months ago, I watched a video about the early night vision goggles in the Vietnam War unintentionally allowing soldiers to see demons. This was an interesting story, because I realized that this was actually scientifically possible. Normal human eyesight is only capable of perceiving a very small band of what physicists call the electromagnetic spectrum. Thank you, Zacchaeus Hundley, for the super chat. Zachary says it is lit, and he should know. Thank you, Zach. The author continues, just off the top of my head, I remembered the name Roy G. Biv, which is an easy way to remember the band of the electromagnetic spectrum that we call visible light. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. On that spectrum just below red is infrared, and just above violet, ultraviolet. Did the U.S. military night vision goggles used in Vietnam register infrared, ultraviolet, or low light, and amplify it or translate it from something that people cannot see into the visible light spectrum that we can? When I began research on this subject, I found a very detailed and thorough history of the origin and development of night vision optics by the U.S. military, written by history professor Richard Ruth of the U.S. Naval Academy in 2017. Although I did find the specific scientific information for which I was looking, I was both surprised and suspicious that this professor spent so much time explaining the psychological effects of night vision optics used by soldiers in Vietnam. In my opinion, it was almost as if the main purpose of this professor's lengthy, detailed, and thorough history of U.S. military night vision optics was to eventually arrive at the point where he could debunk and discredit any stories about U.S. soldiers viewing demons during the war. Some of his explanations were Vietnam soldiers' reluctance, difficulty, and inability to use the new technology, fatigue. He mentions hallucinations, and the many ways that soldiers were unable to psychologically cope with what they saw when using these scopes. At this point in my research, continues the author, I needed to switch to finding out if there is any documentation anywhere that anything paranormal has been detected using other segments of the electromagnetic spectrum. The most clear explanation came from ghost researcher Joshua Warren, who stated that such things as ghosts or spirits have been detected and photographed in the infrared and the ultraviolet range. Additionally, spirits are sometimes photographed by normal cameras when not visible to the naked eye, and recorded on normal audio tape when unheard by human ear. I believe it was Joshua Warren who gave the explanation. When we turn on a fan that spins at 1,000 RPM, we don't see individual moving fan blades. But taking a photograph, the camera captured a picture of the fan blades as if they are standing still. This is analogous to capturing a photograph or audio recording of a spirit that was neither seen nor heard at the time by the people present. According to history professor Richard Ruth in his article, 1940s to 1950s German, Russian, and U.S. military night vision technology sometimes used an infrared emitter or light source to light up the battlefield where it could be clearly seen using an infrared scope or infrared goggles. But this was risky, because the enemy could see everything just as well if they had infrared goggles too, especially where the infrared light was coming from. Hence, the emitter-receiver technology was not so desirable on the battlefield. The night vision optics that Professor Richard Ruth went into great detail about in Vietnam were ambient light amplifiers that would amplify night light coming from the moon and stars. Eventually, the technology got to where the ambient light was amplified 40,000 times. The images in these scopes showed a generally light green luminous background, with objects appearing gray to black, with very bright eye shine on people and animals. Later on, more modern military night vision optics began using ambient light amplification, combined with infrared light detection or amplification not from an emitter, but from heat naturally radiating off of objects, animals, and people. According to not only the video that I watched, says the author, but from comments to this video and comments elsewhere on the internet regarding this subject, the only Vietnam War night vision optics that showed demons were the red or infrared optics, which were quickly discontinued, taken out of service, and replaced with the green ambient light amplification optics, which became commonly called starlight. The U.S. Naval Academy history professor Richard Ruth, in my recollection of what I read, seemed not to include any mention of early Vietnam War night vision optics. Thank you, Takahama Olsen, too, for the super chat. TO2 says, my eldest brother was a Long Tan veteran. He's got some good supernatural stories to tell from his time in Vietnam. That is so cool. Thank you, Takahama Olsen, too. Seemed not to include any mention of early Vietnam War night vision optics, which either emitted or greatly amplified infrared light. Veterans commented on the internet that the red or infrared night vision optics were taken out of service in Vietnam. The ghost investigator Joshua Warren explained that ghosts or spirits are sometimes photographed in infrared. Okay. Good thing we have another reading. This one from coasttocoastam.com. Yes, the real Coast to Coast, or website thereof. And in a show hosted by Ian Punnett, there's a synopsis which reads as follows. In this particular show, which aired July 8th, 2023, so not too long ago, last month. The description begins, world-renowned psychic medium and Oxford-educated attorney Mark Anthony joined host Ian Punnett to talk about a fascinating chapter in paranormal research about soldiers in Vietnam who reportedly saw demons while wearing red light lens night vision goggles. During that war, the U.S. designed and built red night vision goggles. The theory was red night vision goggles would allow soldiers' eyes to maintain daylight sensitivities and more easily switch from day to night vision, because red light does not force the eye to adapt to low light conditions. Red light also stimulates the brain's neurons to increase reflex time and spatial awareness. The new goggles were issued to mostly airborne troops in 1965. And the whole bizarre episode took place over about 60 days, Anthony continued. A week after the soldiers were issued the red night vision goggles, their behavior began to change. Quote, the men started acting strangely. They started talking about things that nobody else could see. They were fixated by staring at treetops. Then they started having discipline problems and actually began fighting among themselves. End quote. According to Anthony, a pivotal incident happened during a helicopter patrol over a relatively peaceful area of Vietnam, when a gunner wearing the red night vision goggles opened fire at something at the same altitude as the chopper. Anthony reported the gunner cried out. He was shooting at demons. He kept screaming, demons. Noting that the gunner described the beings as horrible looking, with horns, and flying towards the chopper. Officers and pilots had been ordered not to wear the red night vision goggles, but an officer aboard the helicopter ordered the gunner to remove his goggles and then put them on himself. Anthony reported he saw several grotesque winged humanoid creatures flying up from the treetops, flying up from below and toward the helicopter. This was not an isolated event. For weeks, reports kept coming in about flying monsters spotted by soldiers who wore the red night vision goggles. Officers who disobeyed their orders and wore them described seeing gargoyles or demons. And anyone who wore them indicated the creatures would come after them as soon as they saw them. Use of the red night vision goggles was abruptly canceled after 2 months. Soldiers who had worn the goggles were mentally unstable for months after the experience. Anthony revealed, adding that the military has since switched to green light night vision goggles. And that's the end of that synopsis. And if you're a member of Coast to Coast, you can hear that show. Let's check out some art.
4 ex-British infantry soldiers fly out to the deserts of Gran Canaria for a 36-hour airsoft game, sneaking up on enemy positions in the dead of night using night vision goggles, with the story ending at the top of a mountain where we ambushed an entire enemy platoon in complete darkness.
What are you doing now, Charlie?
Taking a break. So, one stag in, 50 minutes, just perk myself up, got a nice little coffee vibe with me. Testing the pet box before we go out on patrols at night. That is on.
The position we wrecked yesterday, the Skulls group, in their possession is a HVT. We're going to go up there and they're going to hand over that HVT to us in exchange for us defending their camp against an imminent attack. Salam alaikum. Salam alaikum.
HVT located, we set up a snap ambush and wait for the enemy to push our location.
To my 12 o'clock as I'm looking now, 60, 70 meters. So I'm not going to engage till they get closer. Coming closer now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 50 meters out. Get ready, Charlie. 3, 2, go. Right, bomb back. Bomb back, bomb back, bomb back. Nice, Charlie. I'm gonna rotate left, I'm gonna rotate left. Yo, I'm crossing your fire, bro. I'm gonna rotate left, who is that? Alex, come with me. Was I distracted? Nice. Stay there, Alex, keep me distracted.
Mission complete, we successfully protected the camp and we RTB to base.
We have a reading here by Shrivastava, entitled The Mysterious Winged Woman Encountered During the Vietnam War. It's at infinityexplorers.com. And Shrivastava begins. Every now and then, tales of bizarre encounters with humanoid creatures come into the limelight, such as Mothman, Yeti, Chupacabra, etc. There have been many reports of weird flying humanoids over the years. The Mothman was made famous, and it is undoubtedly the most well-known creature, believed to be either extraterrestrial or supernatural, but definitely something not human. Before we discuss this astonishing case of the winged woman witnessed during the Vietnam War, let's take a look at the infamous Mothman. It is believed that the Mothman is an otherworldly creature with bright red eyes who appeared from nowhere, and according to some, it also resulted in the Chernobyl nuclear tragedy and numerous deaths. But who or what was the Point Pleasant Mothman? On a dark night of 1966, when 5 funeral directors working in a cemetery in the neighboring town of Clendenden were startled to see what they characterized as a brown human shape with wings rise out of the dense surrounding woods and soar off into the distance. The strange beast reappeared 3 days later. 2 young married couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette, were driving around the town in Scarberry's automobile at the highly suitable hour of the witching hour, when a bizarre incident took place. The next creature, which very much resembles a Mothman, is Bat Squatch, which was apparently witnessed by a man in 1994. On the evening of Saturday, April 16th, a young man came across a Bat Squatch in the southeast of Buckley, Washington State, with Mount Rainier in the near distance. Interestingly, Mount Rainier has another intriguing and well-known aerial mystery associated with it. On June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, a pilot who was flying over the mountain when he came across a squadron of strange flying objects that, after the news got wind of the encounter, became widely recognized as flying saucers. However, let's go back to Bat Squatch. Brian Canfield, who was at the time driving his vehicle to Camp 1, a community in the area that is located close to Lake Kapowsin, where he witnessed the terrifying beast. Everything was well up until Canfield's headlights started to fade. And in a matter of the next few seconds, the engine of his car failed completely. When this infernal creature came into view at around 9:30 p.m. on a lonely section of Washington State Road, the young man was scared to death and couldn't figure out how to react. Canfield was unable to do anything but watch in horror as a gigantic dark-colored humanoid fell from the night sky. The creature glided and came to rest directly in front of his car. Canfield was so terrified that he was unable to move. All he could do was hold on to the steering wheel while utterly terrified, gazing at the beast in front of him. The winged woman humanoid in the Vietnam War. The war was a conflict in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia from the 1st of November 1955 to the fall of Saigon on the 30th of April 1975. The war ended when U.S. forces withdrew in 1973, and Vietnam unified under communist control 2 years later. However, what grabbed the attention was the sighting of a winged woman humanoid during the war. The incident occurred in Da Nang, a city on Vietnam's south-central coast, where a guy named Earl Morrison and a number of his friends experienced the shock of their lives in 1969. The ominous event took place in the dark of night, as the guys were on guard duty and vigilantly on the lookout for the Viet Cong. Up until 1:30 a.m., it was a regular, calm, and typical night. Then suddenly, a point came where the atmosphere altered, and startled the Marines of the U.S. First Division. They were alerted by the presence of an unsettling shape. Morrison was initially hesitant to come out to the public, but he later changed his opinion, and by 1972 was at ease talking about the incident, even though he wasn't at ease with what he experienced. And here's the quote. It's a long one, 2 paragraphs. "We saw what looked like wings like a bat's, only it was gigantic compared to what a regular bat would be. After it got close enough so we could see what it was, it looked like a woman, a naked woman. She was black, her skin was black, her body was black, the wings were black, everything was. But it glowed. It glowed in the night with a greenish cast. She started going over us. We still didn't hear anything. She was right above us, and when she got over the top of our heads, she was maybe only 6 or 7 feet up. We watched her go straight over the top of us, and still she did not make any noise while flapping her wings. She once blotted out the moon. That's how close she was to us. And dark. It looked like pitch black then, but we could still define her because she just glowed, real bright-like. And she started going past us straight towards our encampment. As we watched her, she had got up about 10 feet or so away from us. We started hearing her wings flap. And it sounded like regular wings. and she just started flying off, and we watched her for quite a while. End quote. A UFO researcher, Don Worley, was one of those who showed a lot of interest in the tale of the winged woman humanoid of Da Nang. Additional information was revealed in his personal meeting with Morrison, including the woman's black straight hair, the possibility that her wings were slightly furry, the way she rippled as she flew by, the lack of visible bones in her body, and the way that her wings appeared to be directly molded to her hands and arms. The investigators Janet and Colin Board said of this particularly odd case, in their classic 1980 book Alien Animals, quote, Usually our reports of winged fingers describe them as men, but without any indication whether the features are seen which tell the witness definitely that it is a man. In view of this, we suspect that so-called bird men should strictly be termed bird people or bird persons, and that no sex attribution can honestly be made. However, the Da Nang sighting does not come into that category. End quote. Only one other woman humanoid with wings are we aware of, and that is Cyraeth, also known as Grachil Ribbon, or the Witch of Ribbon, a mythical being from Wales. She resembles an Irish banshee, crying and moaning to prophesy death. There are many who call the witnessed winged woman humanoid an angel as well. Now, there's not much about this written on the net, except for this poem here called Flying Woman of Vietnam by Richard Stevenson. This is at the website bewilderingstories.com. And I didn't see this reproduced anywhere else. It's copyright 2018 by Mr. Stevenson. And he begins. We were hanging in Da Nang, on guard duty but still chill, after a long haul humping our weapons through the jungle. Man, we hadn't yet a toot off the rifle barrel. This was no induced hallucination, dude. We thought it was a glider, some engineless ultralight or something, until it got closer. It was a woman, all black. She had long black hair, shoe-polished black skin, a beautiful figure, and black bat-like wings. Loof, loof, she flew less than 10 feet above us. We watched her hang a Louis and fly off to the horizon. A left, I guess, hang a Louis. At first, we didn't want to say anything about the incident. Didn't want to be ridiculed or dismissed as stoner idiots. That's it. We've never seen the like of the thing since. Shapeshifter? Witch? Some kind of revenant ghost? Spirit hostess with the mostest. I thought our names were being called, so to speak. That she had come to deliver the news of our imminent death. I admitted I was scared stupid. We all were. And I don't have any kind of explanation. Perhaps a portal just opened up for a moment. Maybe we were privileged to see a creature from some other dimension. I came to see the war as surreal, the creature as my black angel. So there is more than one source on this incident, which is interesting. Let's check out some art.
Marré, essa onda. Tá vindo isso. Ai, vou soltar! No jodas.
Here at thesmartlocal.com, the smartlocal.com website. The is part of the title. Is a story called 8 Vietnamese Supernatural Beliefs That Will Send Shivers Up Your Spine. And the author begins. Some of us think Vietnamese supernatural beliefs stem from true stories, while others might dismiss them as works of fiction, made up to scare the feeble-minded. Regardless, it's always intriguing to read about paranormal activities. So here are 8 Vietnamese supernatural beliefs that will keep you awake at night. Number 1, the pall-bearing ritual game. Supernatural phenomenon or just plain physics? Perhaps you're familiar with the finger lift challenge that was popularized in the West by many YouTubers back in 2017. In it, one person sits down on a chair, while 4 to 6 others stand around him or her, performing a ritual by putting their hands above his or her head. After the act, the standing group is able to lift the sitting person just by using one finger each. Looks like they're using 2 fingers each. That doesn't look fair. But here is what you probably didn't know. Long before becoming an internet trend, this little game had been played by Vietnamese children for generations. Though the ritual we had was a lot grimmer. Instead of sitting on a chair, the person being carried must lie down, sometimes with a white towel covering his or her face. 7 others would surround him or her and put their index fingers under his or her head, shoulders, hips, and ankles. The person standing at the head would then ask the person to his or her right, "What are you doing?" To which the other would reply, "I'm pall-bearing." This little girl is alive, by the way, that they're levitating. The process would be repeated until everyone had been asked and answered the same question. Then at the count of 3, the group of 7 would then be able to lift the lying person on their fingers. Many believe that by covering the carried person's face and saying they are pall-bearing, the participants could trick wandering ghosts into thinking they were carrying a dead person to the grave. Thus, the ghosts would flock over to lend a helping hand, making the lifting possible. Some also warn that this is an extremely dangerous game to play, as the ghosts might refuse to leave afterward and follow the participants, causing them misfortune or sapping away at their life force, and in turn shortening their lifespan. But of course, others have looked at the phenomenon from a more scientific angle, explaining that the ritual, whatever it might be, is simply a signal for everyone to act simultaneously. This way, the weight of the carried person is distributed evenly, and each carrier has only to support 8 to 10 kilograms on their fingers, the equivalent of carrying a heavy grocery bag. 8 to 10 kilograms, huh? That sounds heavy to me. Doesn't sound like no 5-pound bag of sugar. Maybe 2 5-pound bags. That's pretty heavy. Number 2, the ghost of the empty can, a spooky children's game. Another spooky game that Vietnamese children still play from time to time, even to this day, is Malan, the ghost of the empty can, where they perform a ritual to supposedly summon a ghost to possess an empty can. Over the years, there have been many variations of this ritual. But at its core, it involves lighting incense, candles, and a cigarette next to an empty can in the dark. In a dark, secluded place, ideally a cemetery, or the site of a fatal road accident. If performed properly, the cigarette will flare up as if someone were smoking it. And once it goes out, the empty can will begin to move on its own and chase the participants around. Many Vietnamese claim they've played this spooky game, and even some have video recordings to prove it. Still, the skeptical insist this is no more than a prank, where one of the participants pulls the can with a string to make it move around. Some believe this game can be traced back to the 1970s, when electricity was not widely available in the country. Children at the time did not have the internet or smartphones, as we do today, and they would entertain themselves with makeshift football games using an empty can after dusk. Why play at night, though? You're asking for it. Perhaps as they came home with bruised ankles, they made up stories of being chased by a ghost-possessed can to add a level of mystery to things. Maybe. The Curse of Tolik River. Tolich. Tolik. Let's say Tolik. And the caption here says, human bones and relics found in the Tolik River image. Image credit. Found in the Tolik River. Tolik is the name of a not very clean river weaving through Hanoi that makes locals wince every time they have to pass through the area. But it is also known for a supernatural story, the Curse of the Tolik River. Back in September 2001, while dredging a section of the river of mud and trash, a construction team uncovered several wooden piles arranged in a strange formation, including ceramic relics, metal utensils, and even bones from human skeletons. The peculiar occurrence made headlines in several respected newspapers at the time, but the uproar eventually died down. 6 years later, in 2007, the issue was brought to the surface again when Mr. Nguyen Hung Krung, the leader of the construction team, wrote a series of articles retelling the many misfortunes that had befallen him and others who were related to the project, which had been happening since the incident. According to Mr. Kurong, shortly after excavating the site, several of his construction workers started to experience nightmares in which they were haunted by spirits, as well as health issues such as epileptic seizures. Mysterious accidents also happened to their families. And these pictures are from a newspaper article about the curse. The articles were published in a newspaper operating under the Supreme People's Procuracy of Vietnam. And the article sparked a lot of interest in the public. People were saying that the formation had been set up by Chow Bien, a Chinese general occupying Vietnam in the 9th century, with many living sacrifices. By disturbing it, the construction team unleashed evil spirits that led to the unfortunate incidents. Professor Trang Quoc Phuong, a well-known historian, also met an untimely demise after examining the relics found in the river. Mr. Kurong's articles were dismissed as baseless and removed. And the newspaper was fined $860 US worth for spreading false information. Still, the existence of a mysterious formation underneath the Tolik River has spawned many rumors and even become the inspiration for fiction stories written by horror enthusiasts. Number 4. The graveyard under the West Lake, home to thousands of submerged graves. Wow. Occupying a large section of northern Hanoi. And look at that. That's the graveyard right there. The West Lake offers plenty of fresh air and is home to many bars and cafes, making it a popular hangout spot. However, underneath its serene surface is a massive graveyard that has given birth to countless legends. Scholars agree that in ancient times, most of the West Lake today used to be a vast patch of land where generations of people lived. And as they lived out their lives, they were buried close to his home. They were buried close to home. Over the centuries, the area became home to thousands of graves that have now been submerged as the lake expanded. In fact, some graves built on high ground are still visible above the water surface, even to this day. There's a grave marker right there. Let me see if we can take a closer look at this. There it is right there, sticking up out of the water. Isn't that something? Naturally, with the existence of the graveyard comes ghostly stories. Some elders still recall back in the 1970s, residents around the area started a trend of diving into the lake to retrieve wood from the graveyard's coffins to sell for money. However, all who did so, or those who bought furniture made from the coffin wood, soon encountered misfortune attributed to the retributions of the dead. Many carpenters reportedly went mad while applying varnish to these pieces of wood to make them look new, as they witnessed human silhouettes forming on the varnished layers. Meanwhile, some of the best divers inexplicably drowned while going out for a casual swim in shallow water. Their bodies only found days after the accident. Locals also say it is not uncommon to fish up human bones and even skulls while fishing in the lake. Number 5, Ma-Da, evil spirits of the drowned. The term Ma-Da might not ring a bell to the younger generation, but most millennials have probably heard our grandparents tell stories of these vengeful water spirits. As the stories go, Ma-Da are the spirits of drowned victims that appear as bloated corpses with weed tangled in their hair. They are usually described as having a childlike appearance, perhaps because victims of water-related accidents in ancient Vietnam were often children. Due to the untimely and painful nature of their deaths, Ma-Da are unable to find peace. And the only way they can escape their torment and be reincarnated is to find another to take their place. As such, they lurk underwater to prey upon unsuspecting victims. It is also said that it's very hard to retrieve the body of someone taken by a Ma-Da. It is true that deaths by drowning are not uncommon in Vietnam, even in big cities such as Hanoi or Saigon. Number 6, the hat-wearing dog, the embodiment of a demon. We all know that a dog is a man's best friend. But if your dog has white fur and a red nose, You'd better keep an eye out to see if it displays any peculiar behaviors, as it might not be what you think it is. According to Vietnamese folktales, a dog with white fur and a red nose is no dog, but the embodiment of a demon. Normally it acts like any other of its canine kin, but during the full moon, you might see it walk around on its hind legs, carrying a stick in its front paws, and wearing a straw hat. In some variations of the story, the dog also climbs to the roof of a house and lets out haunting howls until the rising of the sun. The cries are believed to be the demon dog's call for other evil spirits to come and cause misfortune to the owner of the house. Of course, nobody has actually witnessed such occurrences, but the image of the demon-possessed dog is one that is seen as in many Vietnamese horror stories.
It's supposed to be this tourist hub where lots of people go and there's lots of amusement parks and things like that. According to Google, that's what it should be. That's what it's named. But when we got there, I don't know if it's because we were in low season or something, but it was pretty much abandoned. You know, the shops were closed on the side. The only place that would sell food near our hotel was the actual ferry port, and I thought that was very strange. You know, we went in there, we tried to get some sweets or something, and the security guards were just looking at us very strangely, like we shouldn't be there. We then tried to walk into another shop, and like, I don't know what was going on. It was just this bar, but then inside was some sort of weird convention, and the security guards were shouting at us to get out as if we shouldn't have even like opened the door to see what was in there. It was just a bar, you know, labelled on the outside. So a few strange things happened, but then the weirdest thing of all was we went to this sort of dolphin park. We didn't even know it was a dolphin park at first. We thought it was just this amusement park, like a theme park sort of thing. It was right outside our hotel, right next to the beach, but it was completely abandoned, and we got sold these tickets. And when we went in there, we realised there was nobody else there. It was getting dark, the sun was setting. The rides were all lit up, but there was nobody operating them. And there was only one member of staff who was the one selling us the ticket at the gate. And she sort of looked at us as if to say, what's wrong with you? You know, it's open, go in. But there was like roller coasters with nobody operating them, not moving, but they were still lit up. There was like abandoned ball pit parks and strange things. And then as we went up to the top of the hill, it gets even weirder because there's this huge overgrown outdoor stadium with like rusted seats and plants growing in and out of the seats and everything. And with a bit of research, I discovered that this was actually it used to be a huge tourist hub where they would have like alligator shows and really interesting outdoor performances and stuff, and it's just now abandoned, but it's still part of the theme park. They still let you go up there for some reason. And I don't know, we got to the top and we heard these like weird animal noises and howling and stuff. We just got a bit freaked out. We went back down. But then we realised that we'd actually been locked in. And for some reason they had closed and locked the gates behind us. I don't know, I can't remember if I filmed any of that, but very weird experience, very strange place. And, you know, according to the reviews, it used to be a really big tourist hub and there was stuff going on there. I think there is still things happening there, and maybe we just got unlucky and, you know, there was a shortage of staff and they happened to lock the gates behind us, and they also happened to let us into the theme park where nothing was open or running. Very strange experience. Anyway, either way, we didn't go to the dolphin show in the end, we just went back. If any of you know what happened to that resort, or like what the story is behind La Paz and Tuan Chau Island, I'd be very interested to hear it, because I couldn't work it out and I couldn't find anything about it online. I just had to share this kind of weird.
The ghostly purchase at the Big C Haiphong. A popular urban legend that circulated widely around the northern city of Haiphong in 2009 was of a ghost that made a purchase at Big C Haiphong, a major mall in the city. Word on the street was that it was just another day at the mall when a pretty young girl came around and asked for a refrigerator. After finding one to her liking, The girl paid about 130 US dollars equivalent and asked to have it delivered to her home. When the delivery man reached the address provided by the girl and rung the bell, an older lady answered, but said she lived there alone and had not ordered anything from Big C. As the man showed her the receipt with the name, age, and address of the girl on it, the older woman burst into tears and said that the girl was her daughter, but she had passed away in a road accident several months prior. The day before she passed, the woman said, she did promise to buy me a refrigerator this summer. Panicking, the delivery man took the fridge back to report to his boss, who checked with the cashier that had served the girl and found that there were several bills of ghost money, which is fake money burnt as offerings to the dead, in the till. The total amount added up to exactly 130 US dollars worth. To make matters worse, the fridge suddenly caught fire for no reason, and no trace of the girl was found on the store's closed-circuit televisions. The story was massively popular among Haiphong residents at the time, but ultimately there was never any evidence to back it up. No one was ever able to provide the identity of the people involved, from the customer to the cashier to the delivery man. Number 8. The Daughter of the Hura Family, a popular ghost story of Saigon. One of the most popular supernatural beliefs of Saigon is the Daughter of the Hura Family, a story associated with Hugh Bon Ho, an influential businessman who lived in the city during the 20th century. That's the 1900s. It is believed that aside from his 3 sons known to the public, Hua also had a daughter later in his life, whom he cherished above all else for her beauty and innocence. As the girl reached her teenage years, however, she contracted leprosy, which at the time was considered more of a curse than the curable disease it is today. To protect the family's reputation, Ho announced that his daughter had died from a sudden illness and held a modest funeral in front of the public. In truth, though, he had his daughter locked up inside her room, her only interaction with the outside world being a small slit under the door through which she was fed. This went on for years, until the girl passed away for real. Some say from the disease. Others claim from self-harm, unable to bear the torment any longer. In any case, the consensus was that she spent the last days of her short life alone and in agony. Since then, locals have reported hearing the mournful cries of a woman echoing from the mansion in the dead of night, or of seeing the ghostly figure of a young girl in a white dress roaming the halls of the building. Hoa's old mansion still stands at the same address today and currently serves as the Ho Chi Minh City Fine Arts Museum. Understandably, the mysteries surrounding the building have attracted many adventurous people hoping to get at the root of things.
At the end of January 1968, Saigon was alive with a festive spirit as everyone prepared for the Tet Lunar New Year. The Tet truce, proposed by the communist North Vietnamese, seemed to promise the people a safe holiday. This year, however, the traditional firecrackers of the Tet celebration became the fireworks of war. The Viet Cong, taking advantage of the noisy celebration, launched a savage attack on Saigon, violating the truce they themselves had proposed.
So as you may know, guys, this day is the Tet holiday, which is Vietnamese Lunar New Year. And we are going to be sharing with you guys the vibe of this city of Son La during Tet. All right, this is the entrance of the market that we're going to be entering. People are buying things with them. What is that?
This is the offerings for the temple. They have water, lucky money, they have the prayer.
Wow, they have dollar. Look at that. Oh. Chak mon namoy. Happy New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Chak mon namoy. Chak mon namoy. Happy New Year. Look at this one. This one says Chak mon namoy. Yeah.
And this one you put it on the trees, right?
You hang it in the tree. But yeah, let's go to one of the temples that we saw here. Wow, look at this tree. Look at this one, is stunning. Look at all the trees. Hello, Chak mon namoy. How are you? Happy New Year.
Thank you.
You got like fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, fresh everything. How are you? Chak mon namoy. Hello. It's like in the tree.
The peach blossom.
That's
It's the perfect time for bloom.
wow, look at all the trees.
Yeah.
You want one?
A picture is enough. Hello.
Hey, Chak mon namoy.
Look at it.
Wow, that's a big one. Look at that. Huge.
Here at wearethemighty.com is a story by Bethany Phillips entitled The Phenomenon of North Vietnamese Laughing Soldiers. It's a recent article from May 25th, 2023. Summary. Imagine approaching an enemy North Vietnamese soldier on the battlefield. They are likely wielding a weapon, perhaps in a stance ready to attack, even yelling or saying something threatening. In this scenario, you are close, Vietnam style, where you can see the whites in one another's eyes. There may be a variety of tactics that the enemy soldier could take, almost all of them violent or offensive in some way. But what if they were not fighting at all? And instead of pointing their gun or knife, they just laughed. Hysterically, uncontrollably, in your face. As you raised your weapon until the second you shot and killed them, they laughed with their entire body, mouth open, loud laughing. From feet away, they walked toward you, getting closer with each step. And as you prepare for a brawl, they just keep laughing, while looking you directly in the eyes. Sounds creepy, right? Who does that, especially during war? What was funny? Why didn't they fight back? Even if they didn't have a weapon, chances are they would scream or become frantic, right? at least attempt to put up a fight. But instead they laughed and seemingly willingly walked toward their own death. And it wasn't just one North Vietnamese soldier, but several of them. This same event was reported over and over again by Americans during the Vietnam War. They were approached by a laughing soldier, raised their gun, and shot the enemy as the Viet Cong soldier continued to laugh. It was also featured in Vietnamese-era books and movies, offering a realistic take of how the war was fought guerrilla style, and with close-faced laughing. One Vietnam vet wrote online, quote, "I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation of why this happened. But it's pretty creepy that the enemy might just walk up to you and just start laughing in your face, seemingly not caring whether you shoot them or not." Creepy indeed. One can't help but wonder how today's soldiers would react in a similar situation. Perhaps it was their culture. Instead of panicking, they laughed. In fact, laughter has a proven effect of terror. But what still doesn't make sense is why they would fight prior to the laughter and then seemingly give up. Perhaps it was their way of ending it all. But that still does not account for the repeat behavior. And it fails miserably as an intimidation attempt, seeing as they allowed Americans to pull the trigger. Other theories still include that the soldiers were using certain substances, as more than half of them were said to have taken substances at some point. Others may have relied on the substance to fight at all. Or simply they may have been forced to fight and didn't want to be in battle. It was their way of avoiding their duty to serve the North Vietnamese military. Viet Cong soldiers were widely made up of teenagers, young military members who did not want to fight, but had no choice in their future without doing so. The only real gain they could get is psychological. By freaking out the opponent, they performed a mission to get inside the enemy's head. But that's a pretty big sacrifice to give someone the heebie-jeebies. It's still discussed as one of the creepiest events of American battlefields to this day. Let's check out some art.
It's a rolling bomb shelter. It's a place to hiding rolling bomb.
Can you go down?
And just look down, not go down. In the way people slide down.
They slide down, yeah.
Slide down to hitting.
Oh wow.
They dropped leaflets and broadcast by loudspeakers carried on helicopters. Their commonest ploy was to scare us with threats. B-52s will destroy you. But these threats were ineffective on the Vietnamese, who have a centuries-old tradition of fighting off foreign invaders. But we had weaknesses. We missed our homes. We lived in tunnels and shelters. We were constantly short of food. But worst of all, each night the Americans sent over helicopters broadcasting recorded tapes of babies crying and women's voices pleading in Vietnamese for us to come home, or a child's voice saying, "Mummy can't sleep, she is crying, she misses you and loves you." It went on like that all night. Can you imagine what it's like for a soldier in a tunnel away from his family for years? At night, hearing those voices? It certainly affected the spirits of our fighters. Those recorded voices made us think of what we missed, but afterwards we were more determined to fight.
These recorded voices are the sounds of psychological operations created by the U.S. Armed Forces during the Vietnam War. Actors are cast as pleading voices from home voices from the beyond and voices of the dead. These imaginary ghosts have a home as well, on recordings known as the ghost tapes.
The basic idea behind the ghost tape, or the ghost tapes, the different versions, was that in that culture, you must be buried according to a certain protocol. And in the best of all possible protocols, you need to be buried close to home. And that was not happening. There were a lot of bodies being left on the field. If that's the case, then according to their own culture, that spirit is just going to be wandering and angry and lost for eternity. And that's where this particularly wild, strange, unnerving piece of audio came from. And to my knowledge, the first time it was ever used was on a swift boat down in the Delta. And they got into a situation where there was no moon. The swift boat team cut their engines because they wanted to give the impression that it was a spirit on the loose, a real wandering spirit speaking from the night sky. They drifted down into what was anticipated to be a VC concentration or an NVA concentration. They launched the tape, and it was echoing all over the Delta. And my understanding is they got 13 defections after that first use.
Here at warhistoryonline.com is a story by Jay Hemmings entitled Rock Apes, the cryptids that supposedly once plagued GIs. Sign up? No, we're not going to do that. Can we get rid of the ad, please? Okay, good. Good so far. And Jay begins. Sightings of rock apes by Viet Cong and NVA troops, North Vietnamese Army, NVA, were also common enough that an NVA general organized an expedition in 1974 to try to capture one. Everyone's heard of cryptids. While rock apes, or Batututs as they are called in Vietnam, are nowhere near as well known as the more famous cryptids, sightings of these mysterious creatures by American troops in the jungles of Vietnam throughout the course of the war were surprisingly numerous, with many witnesses giving extremely detailed accounts of sightings. One particular hill in Vietnam was the site of so many rock ape sightings that it became known as Monkey Mountain. While no corpses of these strange creatures were ever recovered, nor any clear pictures taken of them, the fact that sightings of them were so widespread and common throughout the war makes them worthy of an investigation. Rock apes were so named because of their supposed propensity for throwing rocks, usually in retaliation, after rocks were thrown at them first. They were also said to toss grenades hurled their way back at the thrower on occasion. Described as being up to 6 feet tall and strongly built, with long limbs and protruding stomachs. The rock apes, or Batututs, were said by witnesses to be covered in brown or reddish-brown hair. They were also thought to live in troops, rather than living a solitary existence. And their habitat was confined to remote areas of the jungle, far from human habitation. Areas opened up by the Vietnam War. At first, descriptions of these creatures seems to point to the fact they may have simply been misidentified orangutans. But while orangutans did once inhabit Vietnam, they became extinct there thousands of years ago. Also, much of what troops in Vietnam reported about the rock apes doesn't really match typical orangutan behavior. While orangutans are sometimes social animals, they spend far more time foraging alone. Another possible candidate for misidentification is the northern white-cheeked gibbon, which is native to Vietnam. Like the mysterious rock apes, these gibbons live in large social groups and spend most of their time in the trees. But the size descriptions don't match up. Gibbons are far smaller than the 6-foot, heavily built rock apes, while male white-cheeked gibbons weigh an average of 20 pounds. Some rock ape sightings, however, may well have been gibbons, because the rock apes in question were said to be only around 3 feet tall. Sightings of rock apes by Viet Cong and NVA troops were also common enough that an NVA general, General Hong Min Ta, organized an expedition in 1974 to try to capture one of these legendary creatures. The expedition was unsuccessful, though. Another expedition, organized by Professor Vo Quy of the Vietnam National University, was similarly unsuccessful. However, strange human-like but not human footprints were found in the jungle in 1970 by Professor Train Hung Viet of Hanoi's Pedagogic University. He made casts of the footprints, but found no further evidence of the existence of the rock apes. Something quite striking about the many sightings of the rock apes reported by American troops is the fact that these creatures showed little to no fear of humans. They displayed this trait to such an extent that startled troops out on patrol in the jungle would allegedly often happen upon rock apes at distances of a few yards, often getting quite a fright, as they thought they had just come across an enemy patrol, rather than a troop of apes. This apparent lack of fear of humans could be explained by the fact that rock apes inhabited ranges that were usually so far away from humans that they saw them as no threat. Or if reports about their large size were accurate, that they saw human beings as too small or too weak to present any significant threat to them. On at least one occasion, in fact, a large troop of rock apes was said to have attacked a group of Marines en masse. An explanation put forth by skeptics. We won't read that one. Not interested in the skeptics. Perhaps some lucky researcher will come up with something and surprise the world on this topic. After all, the existence of the giant squid, the mythical kraken, long thought to be nothing but a legend, was recently proven to be real. Author Jay Hemmings. Thank you, Jay. Let's check out some art.
Just at the toilet. Now, am I a Nam or a Nu? Well, Nam is man spelt backwards, so by that logic, it's a little... Hey! Urinals, baby!
I'm waiting for you to go ahead so I can get around these cows. Learn the rules of the road! Oh! Whoa!
So this here is where we're going to ride the water buffalo, and this here is what happens if you fall off the water buffalo.
Junk in the trunk pie, come on.
Where to go first?
Oh well. Oh, that was actually fucking sweet. Nothing.
Good pie. making the profit. So
we're going to buffalo farming. Bro, you're letting the side down here.
I've got rice to plant. You can afford the rent. Come on. Get back into it.
The reason that we're singing the song is cause nobody remembered to turn the fucking cameras on.